What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Free Toaster Podcast. I'm here with Jeff Keltner. Jeff is currently the host of What the AI, a podcast that recently made it to my playlist. I highly recommend you check it out. He and co-host Annie just go through kind of the top stories in AI every single week. Jeff, I'm a big fan of the pod. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Before we jump in, I think our listeners would appreciate knowing this about you. First employee as a non-founder at Upstart. So you had worked with the CEO at Google. Apparently there's still a little bit of debate. Who was the first non-founder employee? Maybe we can get into that a little bit. But Jeff, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's kick off with taking us back to your Upstart days. I'm guessing you would have wished that some of the tools out there, Claude Code, some of the things that we're seeing would have existed back then. Before we get into, give us a little bit of a color. Like, what were you working on at Upstart? Maybe in like those last 5 years of your tenure.
Yeah, I kind of probably had two major time periods in my time at Upstart. One, really ultimately running consumer acquisitions when we pivoted from our initial business product into the kind of more traditional lending space. And we were doing partnerships, we were doing digital marketing. We had a little period of time where we thought we're going to be digital only. None of this direct mail, physical stuff. Like, no, that's old and antiquated. And then, that became not true. And I helped run our first direct mail campaign. And then kind of Dave and I were talking and came up with the idea for expanding our bank partnerships from beyond the one kind of, more fintech bank. We worked with Cross River into a kind of slew of banks that could take advantage of the software and the product. And there's, I think, a couple hundred now, or over 100 using the platform. And so I started that business, ran it, took it from 0 to 10 banks, and then handed it over to a scaling expert. It's not me.
So you're on both sides. It sounds like you were working with affiliate partners and with lending. You were on both sides of the marketplace.
I was, and I managed our turndown program. So I managed, acquiring leads through affiliate partnerships, selling leads through affiliate partnerships, and working with bank partners. So I've touched all the things.
Yeah, no. So I think your work probably is similar to what the work I do now, which a lot of phone calls, a lot of relationship building, either in person or over video calls, a lot of cross-functional, I would call it like alignment type of work, where you need marketing and engineering and product and analytics and everyone lined up together to kind of go after an opportunity, whether it's to make something happen. And it's unlike what a lot of people are talking about these days. If you listen to, the like Lenny's podcast, for example, they're obsessed around like product design and eng, and like those three job families and how do they interact and how do they use Claude Code. Our worlds are a little bit different, where we're dealing with people, we're not necessarily writing code. How would you, what are some of the ways you might have used AI back in your BD days?
I can only imagine the number of ways. I use it so much in my life now for the podcast. I think the first thing for me is research. Like, it's just such a great tool for research and for being able to do, I used to read 10Ks and 10Qs of companies or banks I wanted to work with, and you're reading earnings call scripts. You're just trying to compile a list and understand who are the people, and they went to a conference, and what did they say, and what's going on as you're trying to understand the landscape of potential partners or just a space you want to get into more. And the ability to use AI to do that and kind of give you a pretty robust first draft. It's not necessarily, you don't publish it like it's the God's honest truth, but it really cuts down the time to do many of those tasks. And so that would probably be the first place, other than copy editing my emails, because I'm make a lot of copy edit mistakes. But I would be all over the research and automating some of that, right? And then I also think the data ingestion, like when I'm looking at, to your point, the analytics internally, what's going on, what's happening, what's going on, how am I going to combine sets of data, maybe external sets of data with my internal, and try and make sense of it. I'm pretty good at Excel, but Claude is just far better at Excel than I am. And to take that kind of big data dump and go, hey, how do I bring data, signal out of this noise? Like, how do I find what's going on in there? Whether it's my analytics, whether it's my conversion rates, or something happened, and I would be looking at those tools for that. And probably, honestly, I use Claude Code a good amount. Some of it to write code, some of it not, just to do text-based things. But I've written a bunch of custom little tools, and the ability to kind of say, hey, I've got this dashboard idea that's I mean, can I get an engineer to spend the time? I don't know, but like Claude will just write it. If I can describe what I want, I can get some of those little custom tools written. And I would probably be, I'm always kind of like, I got to go play with the thing. So I'd
Yeah.
probably build custom tools and toys and analytics and trying to give myself little dashboards of what I wanted versus what, the systems had or what the standard report was or whatever.
Then I love those too. On research, I want to hear more. I personally use like for like 10Ks research, like public filings. I throw things into Notebook LM quite a bit and get reasonably good output. I've also tried Claude for the same purpose, and I get slightly different. Like, what's your go-to? Do you have a go-to stack here for research for things like this for public filings?
Yeah, I do almost everything in Claude now, and I think I just got lazy. I used to Notebook LM was one of my first aha moments in AI. Right, you kind of went, "Oh my god." I still like it, but I tend to be a textual based person. I like to read versus listen. I can consume things faster, so I like that. So I don't tend to go to Notebook LM. I tend to go to Claude. I've really gotten into Cowork and Claude Code because they can read and write local files. So I can go in and have a bunch of files. I can say, write me a 5-page report on this, and Claude basically uses it like an expanded memory. And so as opposed to having to crunch everything into the context window, it can go back and forth to the file. So that's my stack, is mostly Claude these days. And the Cowork feature and the code feature have been real unlocks in terms of getting more and larger task capabilities out of that versus the standard kind of chat interface.
Got it. The same research. Have you seen tools that could get proactive with it? And by that, I mean, they scan your calendar. They see, for example, on my calendar, I'm meeting with Jeff Keltner at this time on Monday. I actually got a few texts, by the way. It's a software I'm playing with. It's called Lindy AI. And
Okay,
it
yeah,
said,
I've heard of it.
yeah, and I got 3 texts about you. Like, by the way, here's 3 things you need to know about Jeff. It mentioned your upstart background, and it connected the dots. My audience might care about that. So I'm already finding tools that kind of get ahead of that for me. Like, have you played with anything that does that?
I haven't found any that are great, although I haven't spent enough time looking recently. But I will say, once I connected up my email and my calendar, and Claude can automate tasks, so you can schedule, hey, every morning do this. Look at my calendar, tell me what's going on. You start to get pretty close to that. And one of the things I did, there's a guy online, JJ Englert. He works at I think 10x Labs, but he just wrote, like, so when he set up his Cowork, he said, you need to have these like 15 files, like who you are and what you do and your brand voice and how you work. And he had like a prompt that would prompt Claude to ask you the questions to store the files. And doing that helped a ton, because to your point, now Claude knows when I'm in Cowork, at least it knows what projects I'm working on. It knows my podcast. It knows my audience. It knows my voice. So when I ask a question or for research, it'll go, oh, this is really connected to this thing. It can look at my old transcripts from my episodes of my podcast and go, oh, this connects to this thing you talked about 3 episodes ago. And giving it that degree of context, I find really helpful to getting the most out of it. If you just ask a chat, tell me something about Jeff Keltner, you're going to get something.
Right.
But when it is able to know, oh, I'm bringing him onto the podcast, you know about the podcast, you know what the topics are, you know what the audience is, you've got that changes the nature of the quality of the output. And then being able to connect to email and calendar. I just startup consulting. I got a meeting with a startup. I was like, can you just remind me? Like, it's been a month and a half since I spoke to them. Like, just jog my memory and look at my meeting notes from Fathom in my email, any correspondence I've had, any updates they've sent, and then it's like a brief summary. And that's like super helpful because it's got the context of the previous conversations, what I'm doing with it.
So you said Fathom for meeting notes?
Fathom has been my favorite meeting notes taker.
Is that plugged into Claude, or is that a separate thing altogether?
No, it's a separate app. It plugs into any of the, it'll do Google Meet and Zoom and Teams and so I want one that'll go across those, but then it emails me the notes, which is what I love, because then my Gmail becomes a repository that any of the LLMs can plug into. And so, my Claude knows that I have meeting notes in Fathom. So if I ask for things about Carlos, it'll go look for meeting notes that you were in and pull them up. And so I like Gmail as my single source of data truth to get that stuff, as opposed to having to find it in some app.
Yeah, no, I've been with Granola for a lot of my meeting note stuff. I think it's reasonably good, but it doesn't have the benefit yet of plugging into Google. Although I'm guessing there might be an API I can use to like throw the notes.
I've heard a lot of good things about Granola. The weakness in Fathom, it doesn't do in-person meetings at all.
Got it.
I don't do a lot of in-person meetings. I prefer virtual because I get much better notes.
Sure, yeah. No, for sure.
Where, when.
I mean, that's another use case for me. That's really good. Like I think about my days at Karma or at Caribou when I was head of BD. a good part of my job was to keep like my C-suite apprised of like the conversations I was having with everybody. And that was I probably burned 3 hours every Friday. I'm not kidding. Like going back to my notes, looking, yeah, and just compiling like data and like all. I think with something like Granola, I would spend 15 minutes because Granola would have said, "Hey, you had 6 conversations, highlights from each of them." I would have looked over and been like, "Yep, pretty good." Send. Go.
Here's my tip for using
Yeah.
these things well, because if you do that, you can build skills in Claude or whatever, where it's like a repeatable action. It's like, oh, look for these meetings, summarize it this way for this audience, and then what I will do is get the output, edit it, and go, okay, here's what you gave me. Here's what I chose to send to my executive team. Can you fix your instruction set so that the next time I ask you to do this, you
Mm,
get something that looks like what I have
right.
fixed for you? And after 2 or 3 iterations of that, all of a sudden it's executing almost flawlessly on what you want. The other interesting, you bring that up, that you would use it to summarize your meeting notes for updates. A really fascinating use case I heard about was it's not a biz dev, but it's a sales guy who uses Gong. And, you think of Gong, so Gong records all the sales calls. You can think of it as like, oh, I'm going to give training feedback, and did you do a good job, and did you talk too much, and did you hit the value points right, or whatever. He's like, no, I don't do that, because the reps will stop turning it on if I do that. They'll just tell me every customer said they weren't allowed, and it'll turn.
Right.
He said, what I do is I can now instantaneously know what customers are actually telling us. Like every feedback from every customer, every prospect is now available to me in Gong. And so I can take all of it, feed it into an LLM and go, what are the top 5 things my customers are asking about? What are the top 5 things that prospects are telling me is a reason they're not buying or whatever? And it can aggregate across hundreds of reps instantaneously. And that's like mind blowing. I
And
mean,
it can
you would have spent,
quantify it. It can say 31% of people aren't buying for this specific
then
reason.
it'll
Yeah.
give you the recording. It'll say, you can hear Joe from this customer say it right here at minute 2, click the link. And so that, I think, is like, I love when people are saying, not just how do I automate the thing I was doing more easily, but how do I do a thing that I just would have said, there's no way I can't
Right.
reasonably do this on a regular basis. And now all of a sudden it's doable, and you can do it because that AI is doing that kind of grunt work for you.
No, I
So
love it.
I think that's a great use case.
Yeah. Another one for you. Actually, two other ones I've been loving that aren't so much the grunt work, but like kind of making the AI rise to like the strategic level. One is I bring it to sales calls with like new potential customers. I take the transcript and then I say, hey, coach, like I'll find like a sales coach I respect, someone's methodology. It could be an influencer, someone that has content or a book. Pretend you're so and so. Give me tough feedback on how this call could have gone better. And they're like, you said this, you should have said that. You should, when the customer said this, they were looking for X, or like it's incredible how much good feedback you can get from the
You
LLM.
really can. And
Yeah.
I've seen people for high stakes meetings practice, and you can say, hey, I'm meeting with this person or these people. Here's their background. Here's whatever I have on their writings or whatever. Can you react to my message the way you think they would react, and let me actually run through scenarios or answer tough questions and see what you think would land? And they do a remarkably good job. There was a woman who used this for her PhD thesis, the defense, and so she put in the writings of all the professors who were going to review, and she said like 80% of the questions that she was asked in the defense were predicted by the
Wow.
LLM, having told them, because professors have a lot of
Yeah.
writing, right? So you can see their thinking. And so using it to simulate that high stakes conversation, and then say, oh, you're going to ask this hard question. Oh, I better be really, what does this answer work? No, you'd be better if you did it like this. Okay, I can. So I think that's a really great use case. To
That's
just
really
prep.
cool.
Not every meeting is high stakes enough to need that level of preparation, but in the biz dev world, often they are, right? You've got pretty high stakes conversations, and I think that kind of prep is great.
Yeah, no, I love it. Another one for you on this is deck creation, which was like my nemesis sometimes in a job. Let's say it's a strategic roadmap, something like that. I recently did one where I outlined what I thought my narrative was. I put it in Claude and I said, ask me 25 questions to sharpen my thinking or to like expand upon
Mm-hmm.
this. I answered them in a cab. I was going from the airport to a meeting. By the time I was at the meeting, I answered the 25 questions on my phone. I fired back. I told it to enhance the outline. It enhanced it. I got on the phone with my business partner. We talked through the outline. And we're like, oh, that we like this, we don't like this. A lot of color commentary for an hour. I gave it the text file of that conversation. I said, one more
Yes.
rev on the outline. And then I threw it into Gamma and I said, okay, turn this outline into a strategic deck. And the final output was, I was blown away by how good it was. And that
I
was
love
all
that.
done beginning to end in like 90 minutes.
I think the beauty of that, though, is that You started with an outline, not a general ask. You
Right.
had revisions. The transcript to refine is a great one. I've done this where I'm like working with somebody on something, we get an output or a draft. I'm like, as opposed to trying to summarize my feedback, why don't I just give you a transcript of the call I had with my friend where we went over this content, and then you as the AI can read through it, extract the highlights, agree or disagree, maybe ask me some questions. Hey, you guys talked about X. I don't think that's the right direction. That's such a better way to provide feedback, and it gets so much more flavor and context than just a couple of bullet points. Which I think is people who get bad results tend to be giving very little context, not enough information to the LLM to work with. It's a very smart agent, but it can't read your mind. And so if you put it like, you know, two sentences, go make me a strategic depth for this partner. It's like, yeah, I don't. I mean, it'll do it very confident, but it hasn't enough context to do it well.
You talked about analytics earlier. Uh, what are some practical things someone would need to do to like build an analytics dashboard? Like let's say you're a partner manager and you need to know conversion rates and you need to know volumes and you need to understand what's going on across your affiliate world. Like where would one start if all you had was Claude Code?
I mean, the question is going to be, the first question is just where can I get the data that I need to build the deck? Am I getting a CSV? Am I getting APIs? Claude, the code applications kind of have a planning mode and an execution mode. So the first thing I would say is like 101, go to plan mode first and this is where, you've heard, we were talking before we started recording calls about people, product managers becoming engineers or doing the coding work. And it's because so much of the real work that you need to do is to define clearly what you want. If you say, build me an analytics dashboard for a business development program, you're going to get something. But your work is really to go, hey, I want a dashboard with 4 quadrants, and I want a graph of this up here and this over here, and the conversion rate over time from point A to point B in the funnel, because that's what I really care about, not the end to end, but maybe a particular segment. And getting to that level of specificity in a plan mode and allowing the LLM to push back on the plan is really valuable. And then, because the coding part of any of those dashboards is like, it's relatively trivial, right? Like any engineer who's good would say that's not a hard thing to build, but the hard part is getting the right definition of what you want. And so I think that's the thing you got to do is get in there and define what you want well in a plan mode, go back and forth. The AI may go, well, have you thought about this and that, not that? And it's actually to your point, could be a pretty good strategic thought partner to push back on what you may be asking for. And then once it's got a good plan, you say, yeah, go build the thing. I found that for most things of that nature, it just kind of one-shots it and it's great.
Yeah. Wow.
So it just works. The hardest part of any of these coding things is where's it going to live? Like if it's a local app on your laptop that's going to take a CSV file you got locally, no problem. If you want to deploy it into the cloud to touch a remote database, like there's some technical skills involved in finding a cloud hosting environment or whatever. There are like Replit and Lovable are probably the 2 big ones that are both a development environment like Claude Code and a hosting environment. So once you say put it live, you'll get an accessible web app that's just out there and available. So those are pretty cool if you want to have a publicly, a facing thing. But the hard part is always going from, okay, I've got code and it looks awesome on my laptop. Like now, how do I make it available to my whole team and get real-time ingestion of the data from Google Analytics or our custom backend? And that's where you're going to go, you might need an engineer to do that part of the process.
Gotcha.
But even if you think of this as, hey, I prototyped a thing. I've now given you exactly the front end I want that's running off a CSV. Can I take that to my eng team and go, can you make this an internal dashboard? They'll go, yeah, that's super easy to wire up. And they can take it from there and use their Claude Code with access to the databases and whatever and give you real time. And that's super, sometimes a lot easier to talk in prototypes than it is in conceptual work. I find that valuable.
Yeah, the idea of like a PRD is out the window, right? Like you don't need a PRD, and you just say, hey, I vibe coded this thing. This is what I want. Like, can you?
Yeah, but the thing is, to get a good vibe code result, you kind of have to hand it roughly a PRD, and that's what plan mode is,
in the prompt.
It's like PRD. But the reality is, like once you've got a PRD, the execution of most of them is like pretty easy, right? It can take that PRD and go, yeah, I can build this for you now.
I want to pause here for a second to tell you about one of our sponsors, Spinwheel. They've built an API that streamlines your lending application form with just 2 fields. When a customer shares just their birth date and phone number, they can go grab all the information needed to pre-fill their application form. So regardless of what channel you play in, you know that the higher the application rate goes, the lower your cost of acquisition becomes, and the more media you can buy to generate growth. Additionally, they can give you real-time verified consumer credit data and seamless payment processing, which can help you serve customers beyond the initial application. To see a demo, go to spinwheel.io or check out the link in the show notes. It'll hook you up straight with their head of growth.
So I've played around with Claude Code a little. I've spent maybe 5-10 hours in there. Where do I what's the plan mode? Like, do I have to say we're in plan mode, or like, how does that actually work?
Shift tab moves you between modes. There's like a default mode, a YOLO mode that it'll just like will not ask you for permission to do stuff. And there's a plan mode. It's usually like a light blue in my terminal. It's like a little, it says mode right below the chat area. And the plan mode is nice because it'll write up a relatively detailed plan of what it's going to do. And again, the longer form task you've got, the more opportunities for it to go off track a little bit. So getting the plan right before you start executing tends to help a lot at getting the output that you want, as opposed to saying, yeah, here's what I want. It's like, I'll go build it. And then you're like, oh, we totally were on different pages about this and this and this. And now you've built this weird thing that's not what I wanted. And so that plan mode is very helpful.
Got it. Is there any merit back to like building locally? I'm hearing a lot about people getting like Mac Minis and side computers for just AI. Is there any merit, do you think, to kind of keeping the AI in like a safe place, like a separate computer?
So I've got a Mac Mini sitting under this desk that I
Okay.
use. It's not really intended as a safe place, I wouldn't say. I mean, remember, the models aren't running on your laptop. The laptop is just feeding tokens to the model in the cloud to run. The beauty of the Mac Mini, and you see this around Silicon Valley, people walk around, their laptops are always open and they don't want to close them because Claude is doing something. And when you close your laptop, Claude stops working for you until you open your laptop again. And so the Mac Mini tends to be okay, I want to have an always on thing that when I'm on my phone, I can tell it, go start working on this thing, and it's not on my laptop. And so that's what the Mac Minis are useful for. They're like sold out. They're really hard to get your hands on.
And Apple raised the price by like $200 recently.
Yeah, it was just like, they're like, what configuration do you want? I'm like, whatever ships first. Like, I don't want to wait till August. I want a thing. So I've got it. I keep it running so that I can launch more long form coding processes or review processes that I have automated in Claude. And I wanted it to work for 30 or 45 minutes. And I don't want my laptop tied up. I want to be able to go around and do other things and not have my laptop, every time I shut it, it stops the process. So that's what I use the Mac Mini for. It's super useful. Most of the BD type stuff, I'm going to imagine, is done in a session. Like, it doesn't take 30 or 45 minutes for most of this. And so I probably use the Mac Mini 30% of the time, and 70% I'm just running, or even Claude Code, I'll run locally on my laptop because it's going to be done before I'm annoyed by not being able to shut my laptop and go.
And the Minis, are you controlling that on your laptop monitor, or do you have like a separate thing, like a separate monitor?
I've got so I do have a computer science background, so I SSH into the Mini and run stuff in the terminal. I remote desktop on it. You got to buy a little dongle so it thinks there's a monitor plugged in, but I don't have a monitor plugged in, and then I can use the screen sharing so I can remote into the desktop, but I mostly just remote in through the terminal and then run Claude Code there.
Okay, and then you have on your phone, you're controlling Claude Code on the Mini on your phone, it sounded like.
Yeah, they have something called remote control where you can see all the active sessions in your account. And so that's the beauty. I can go in and it's got the code locally on my Mini, and I can just send it a command, and it'll pop up to me if it needs input. So I can just like wander around and have 4 coding sessions happening on my Mac Mini and control them all from my phone for input that it needs from me, which is, it's kind of like living in the future. It's a little weird, but I will say, when you do that, the thing to be prepared for, if you start doing a bunch of these Claude or Codex or whatever sessions, it's like very mentally taxing because it's coming back to you with what would have been a human's, let's say, week's worth of work.
Yeah.
And it's doing it in every 10 minutes. And if you're running 4 of them, it's like 4 people who are doing a week's worth of work and then coming back to you in 10 minutes going, what do you think? What's next?
Yeah.
And you're jumping between contexts and you're getting a lot of new information. You're going, hold on. And so I find myself mentally exhausted if I'm doing 4 or 5 of these at once. And half a day, I'm just like, kind of spent. Because it's actually a lot of effort just to keep up and be able to provide the right feedback across multiple contexts at a pretty rapid clip.
Yeah, I've experienced that as well. I can't help but wonder what like the top 10% engineers are feeling like these days. I'm hearing burnout is like all-time highs in the job. I mean, do you talk to many engineers in Silicon Valley, and like what are they going through these days?
I haven't talked to a ton of engineers in Silicon Valley. I mean, I talked to some at Upstart, and I think there's this kind of like some that are nervous that it's going to take away their job. That like as the coding tools get better, there are some that are like me. They're like a kid in a candy store going, "Oh my God, however good I was, I'm 10 times as good now, and I can accomplish so much more because I can offload a bunch of." And for any engineer, they'll tell you, 80% of the task was just like you knew in your head what you wanted to do, and now you had to kind of spit it out. Right, in a particular syntax and format. And the value that they brought was never like knowing the syntax and the format, it was the thinking. And so they're able to do that. But now it's like, yeah, if that was the hardest mental 10%, and now that's the only 10% you do, and you can ramp it up to 100% of your time, those people are experiencing the burnout going, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm producing like 5 times as much in the same time, but I'm also like tired by 2. I
that's
can't
right.
keep going because I'm just perpetually at the high end of the thinking mode versus the, okay, now I've just got to sit down and like put pen to paper, type out the code for what I've already kind of planned in my head.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that as I think about like grunt work, I hate grunt work, or at least I used to think I hated grunt work, and now I'm appreciating the grunt work as actually it's kind of some cognitive like break, right? Like not having to think really hard, like doing a little bit of filling out an invoice or whatever the task is, right? That hey, I can do in 4 seconds. It gives your mind a little bit of a break, and I think there's some human, like maybe we're wired for some amount of that right now, so it's interesting how we're all adapting to it.
We are
um
adapting to the new realities.
let's change gears here. I'm curious, you spent a lot of time working with like the Credit Karmas of the world when you were at Upstart.
Mm.
I mean, where do you think this is going? So I guess some of the dynamics at play that I hear about all the time, one is all this agentic stuff, right? Agents are going to make shopping decisions for you. You're just going to tell the agent what you want. It's going to run off and go do things. I have to imagine that's going to have some implications for how people buy or shop for credit cards or get loans, etc. I think that kind of hits squarely against the business model of like a Karma. Um, and then you have a bunch of innovation that's happening on like the identity layer and security layers. Open banking is a theme here. Obviously, the way people search for things, LLMs, that's hitting NerdWallet really hard right now. If you look at their earnings, their card business is down 50% from 7 quarters ago. All of that's just because they're not showing up as often in like the blue link results in Google. So I guess what are some of the things you're thinking about as you think, as like put yourself in a lender's shoes? Like what are some of the actions you'd be taking to set yourself
Well,
up for the next couple of years?
I mean, this is a kind of really unknown time about where that kind of front door is going to be, right? I mean, like all the retailers are worried about it, all the lenders are worried about it. Is it going to become agentic, or is it going to be an LLM? Is everybody going to go to ChatGPT and ask the question, or Claude, or one of these 2 or 3 players that are going to be at the forefront? Interestingly, both of those guys are making most of their money on enterprise, not on consumer subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
So whether consumer ends up being a huge play for them and they want to be the front door for every user's experience of the net is not clear. I think that the number one thing I would do, and this has been true, I mean, you talk about this being a challenge for Karma, but the banks, the history of all banks in the country, roughly their business model is we overpay for getting you in the door for your first product, and we make money by being the trusted place you go to get products 2, 3, and 4. I mean, the classic, we give you money to open a checking account on which we make almost nothing, right? And then we give you a car mortgage, a car loan, we give you a mortgage, we give you some investment in products, and we make money over time by not having CAC on every product and having customers that trust us, right? And obviously, Karma and all the affiliates kind of challenged that business model. I think a lot of the banks struggled with, paying for acquisition. If you thought of it as paying for the credit card, for the depository relationship that you used to think of as the front door, then it made total sense. But if you were paying for every transaction, well, it doesn't, the whole business model of most of those institutions doesn't work when they're paying that fee for every transaction, every kind of product that they are offering a customer. And I think that's the question that's happening. The banks are still there. So if I was a lender, I'd be going, how do I build a trusted relationship where that customer comes back to me to ask for the product, where they trust me, or at least give me first shot, right of first refusal, first chance to make an offer. That's the most powerful thing you can get. I think many banks have historically thought of it as the checking account gets that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that in a world of open banking and Plaid that the checking account is actually the center of gravity people thought it was. And I think we're all yet to determine who becomes the trusted party. I think the lenders want to do it. Upstart certainly wants to be the trusted place where you feel like you'll get the best rates and the best process, and that'll be their thing. Karma, I'm sure, would love to be the place that everybody, wants to go. They want every consumer to go, well, when I want to get the right, unbiased answer, what's best for me, I'm going to go there. And, ChatGPT just last week announced that they've now got Plaid integration. You can integrate your bank accounts, and they're going to, I'm sure, offer some like, hey, should I be consolidating my credit card debt? Hey, which credit card is best for me? Look at my transaction history. Features over time, or at least people will ask the apps that. Whether that becomes a consumer behavior or not is TBD. And, there's reasons to think yes, right? A lot of people thought Google wouldn't become the front door to the internet. It did. right? But then most of us that have played with any of these apps and integrations in ChatGPT or Claude have, I went when they got the Zillow one or the Redfin, whatever. I was like, this is super cool. And then I immediately went, this is not nearly as fun as browsing on Redfin. I'm just going to go back. And so I don't know where that's going to land, but I would certainly be watching that carefully. But the number one thing you can do is have a relationship with the consumer where they trust you and they engage with you directly and they come to you first, because that's the most powerful position you can be in any financial institution, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess to your comment on the front door for the internet, the position that Google took, I keep thinking about this was an era, this was maybe 2016, something like that, where Google started the way they do like the shopping ads, like when you search for, I don't know, AA batteries, whatever, like they'll just show you their sponsored products where you can just buy them. They started doing that for credit cards at one point. And that they ended up pulling back. It ended up not working. But there was a moment, I was at Karma at the time, where people in the industry were starting to wonder, is this an existential threat to like their NerdWallets and the Karmas? Because Google has the relationship, they have the trust. If they wanted to just get the data from TU and Experian, they could easily replicate what Karma, or easily in quotes, right? Because there's a lot of,
harder to replicate than you think.
yeah, no, because there's a lot of like bank relationships that you need to get in place. The bureau relationships are non-trivial. There's a lot of very context specific things I think Karma built that I think Google would have had a hard time replicating.
I mean, it's easy to think about what they've done to commerce, and it's, both good and bad, I think, for retailers, because like Google Shopping was great. I was at Google. I remember talking about it, and they go, when you search for Nike shoes, you don't want a link to a website. You want to see the ability to buy, whatever it is you searched for. And so their argument would be, hey, it's better for the consumer. But, a financial services product is not as simple as a pair of tennis shoes. Like, it's a little more complicated in terms of, do I qualify? The rate is not the same, in a world where everybody got the same rate if you qualified, it was closer, but it's not. Right now we have risk-based pricing for most products. And so how much could I borrow? What do I qualify for? And different banks have different kinds of terms. And so that, I think, is a harder product to build, and not as easy as retail. It will be interesting to see if any of these guys choose to get all the way into the, let's pull credit, let's integrate with lenders to give actual offers to customers, because it's not like retail. But at the end of the day, to take your analogy, Google Shopping was not bad for retailers. Like, they get traffic. Right. It's great if you are a brand that has a product that people want. For the Karmas of the world, it's harder, right? Because if you're an affiliate, you're stuck in the middle, and they want to be in the middle instead. But if you're a lender and you can, then you've got to trade your direct customer acquisition with your Little League sponsorship or whatever to your the Google spend. But it does still enable you to have a direct relationship with the customer if you can earn it through the new distribution mechanism.
Yeah, no, to me, I think there's a big question around like the consumer preference and how trusting they'll be in the GPTs and the Anthropics of the world. I mean, I personally get very even now, just playing with Claude, it knows a lot about me. It's just a lot, and when I'll ask it pretty generic questions, and the way it frames its response, it'll say, well, because you run this business and that business, we think blah blah. It's connecting dots that I don't necessarily thought it would connect. So the thought of opening up my bank transactions, my brokerage accounts, my 401ks, and like exposing those to an Anthropic, that freaks me out a little bit, because at some point it gets too powerful and knows too much about you, and it could start to do all sorts of things, right? Like your imagination can run away with what it might do. So like, I actually have a thesis here that consumers will want to keep these worlds separate, like the financial world, guardrail it off to a brand, health data, another brand. I don't know. I just have this feeling humans aren't going to want like a super AI that's like all knowing about every part of their life. I think that's a little scary.
It's a fair thesis. I don't know if I agree with you, but I think it's a fair prediction of what could happen, a fair thesis of what's out there. I also wonder, I mean, these businesses don't have business models for that kind of engagement. Like if they start referring you to credit cards as opposed to going to Credit Karma, like they don't have a way to monetize that. And history would suggest that not enough people are going to pay $20 a month as a consumer to make them have enough revenue to support the cost of running that business. Right. And so what happens to their credibility when they actually have to find some way to monetize that traffic? Can they do it in a way that maintains trust? Can they do it with relationships with lenders and and then credit bureaus that maintain the simplicity. I mean, Credit Karma doesn't just show offers. It's done a lot of work to work with specific lenders to show what kind of offers you can qualify for, to figure out who the best match for you is based on a bunch of stuff that these LLMs don't have access to and probably don't, I mean, I don't know if they want to have access to. So that's a whole different segment of the business that I think is easy to underappreciate the complexity of if you just think of it as an ad placement, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
That's a really good point on monetization. Taking a step back here with all that's changing in AI. You mentioned you dabbled in direct mail a little bit, or maybe more than dabbled while you were in Upstart. I mean,
I started the ball rolling, I'll say. And the ball
okay, got the ball rolling. Fair enough.
Actually.
I talked to, a dozen or so lenders a year and have serious conversations around their distribution. And especially in the fintech world, affiliate marketing and DM, that still dominate, right? Like that still probably accounts for like 80% plus of the accounts that are booked. And a big part of that reason is like the credit bureau, the access to the credit bureau data at the marketing stage. The affiliates have it, the direct mail channel has it. Do you see that changing materially in any way in the next like 5 years with any of these things we've discussed?
I don't, unless somebody chooses to do that. I mean, you're right. Like when I was at Upstart, we had this kind of vision in the early days that we would be digital only, like like we're a fintech brand. We're not going to cut down trees and ship dead pieces of them into people's homes. Like, I mean, and then you realize that the value of it is actually in the targeting through the credit bureau data. Like the reason you do that is to present a credit offer after having done soft pulls to do pre-screens, right? And the pre-screen is really the value. And I don't see how, absent a pre-screen, anybody can replace what is being done through direct mail and affiliates, because both of those primarily are similar natures. They're high intent customers, which you don't always have because you're using credit signals and you have some knowledge of applicability and accessibility of that product to that consumer. And they'll have to replace that. Now, will ChatGPT go out and do a deal with one of the three bureaus and start having your credit score available? Will consumers allow them to do that? I'm sure that will be, you have to turn it on and give some, you have to give your information, verify your identity. I don't know if anybody's going down that path. And I honestly would just highly doubt that in the next, I don't know about 5 years, but 3 years, anybody does. It's a lot of work. They've got, despite the job apocalypse of predictions from companies that they're going to erase all the engineers, best I can tell, they can't hire enough engineers to build all the stuff they want to build. And, ChatGPT was just saying, OpenAI has been saying, hey, we got to stop the side quests and focus on the core. Seems to be mostly enterprise and coding oriented. So like, I just don't see anybody who's got the wherewithal to do that. If I had to make a guess at who it could be, my honest prediction would be Meta. I think Meta's got a vision of, if you talk about the scary thing for you, the health, the whatever, the company that's positioned to kind of own all your personal data and provide a personal assistant type AI against that doesn't have any enterprise ambitions, that isn't selling a coding agency, that's Meta. Now they're not in a great position with their models today to do that, but you can see them wanting to be in that space, right? They've played around with pre-screens and credit bureau data in their current targeting historically, and so you can see them moving into that space. So I would bet on them, if anybody, to make a run at it. But my best guess would be probably nobody does, and so that portion of the business stays where it is. And you've got some new apps that you can like get a little distribution through ChatGPT, and then it turns out not to be that great of distribution, and you spend a lot of time building an integration that nobody uses, and you move on with life. But that's my kind of guess at where this plays out, at least for the next couple of years.
No, that tracks. And I mean, even for Meta, I would probably take the under on it, just because you look at the dollars flowing through the space. Like Karma reports now publicly through Intuit, and they're at like $2.3 billion in revenue, something like that. To these AI companies, $2 billion in revenue is like nothing. It's like, aren't they raising like $30 billion
like a month
at a time?
Of data center spend in one data center? It's like
it's like, and to your point, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of relationships, it's a lot of nuance. These are hard businesses to build, and on the scale that they're operating, I doubt it's going to be interesting even to the Metas. But I tend to agree with you. Meta has like a more consumer oriented. I would feel a little bit more strongly about that prediction if I had seen more material progress from Meta on consumer lending. Like if they had if they made it easier basically for lenders to distribute through their platform, I would feel a little bit more comfortable that they would go there. But I just haven't. I've been waiting for it for 10 years, and I haven't seen very much come through it.
You're right. Like I think they're more aligned with the consumer value proposition message for an AI agent than the others. So if anybody did it, I would predict them. But you're right. Like we haven't really seen them. they could have taken over that space in the advertising affiliate type realm, right? Just like, hey, we're going to do pre-screen advertising, and they haven't really invested in that substantially, which would be, if they had, they'd be in a great position to expose it to chat. But they have to both create the chat experience for it, and then they have to actually have the data integration, the lender integration to provide the offer.
It's almost like they have to like buy Karma and like integrate Karma somehow in like what they're doing. Like, but now that it's living within Intuit, I doubt Intuit's going to break that off. And so like if Karma was operating as an independent entity, maybe, but the way things live now, I think it's a little bit harder. Let's take a quick break in the action here, because I'd like to introduce you to our newest sponsor, Fintel Connect. They're an affiliate marketing platform that can help connect you to publishers, influencers, and manage your compliance. I'd love for you to check them out. You can find them at fintelconnect.com, Fintel connect.com, where you can connect directly with their founder and CRO. Jeff, one thing before we wrap, something we talk a lot about on the pod is new lenders kind of come to me, my organization, this podcast, to get tips, tricks, advice on how to get going in affiliate marketplace channels. The common things I see here are like their product's a misfit for the channel. They haven't ironed out all the friction. They haven't invested in their relationships up front. Like those are some of the themes like we kind of hit over and over. I'm curious, just based on your experience working with affiliate partners, like what if you had to give someone a quick crash course on like, hey, before you approach these guys, make sure you do X, Y, Z. Like what would be some of those things you would share?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have hit the highlights, because I don't think mine will be too different. But I do think it's easy to underestimate how good the analytics on production are for these affiliates, particularly the larger ones. So I might start with do you want to go to the big guys to start, where there's deep data integrations and optimization of it's not just like, oh, I want to get some more ads. Like, well, what's your conversion rate? What's your offer rate? How good are your offers? How good's your completion rate? Like those things are measured very precisely. And if you're not mature in your process to actually deliver on that, you're going to underwhelm those larger players. There's obviously lots of affiliate marketplaces with more kind of ad placement and content, and those are much easier places to get started and to maybe target an audience if you know what your segment of your credit spectrum is. I do see so many lenders who don't really understand what segment of the credit spectrum or segments they're playing and are strong in, and how that ties into the kinds of marketing or placements they might want to have. Like, you'll see people go, yeah, we're trying to, sir, we're going to hit this big renters marketplace. I'm well, you got a credit model that only approves 720 plus. So like you're mismatching your likely consumer base with what that is. And so I think really understanding that stuff well and having your product mature before you go to the larger players is pretty important, because it's a better oiled machine, I think, than many people appreciate how they work. Not just those players, but how they work with the lenders and how tight those integrations are and how good the data is. But I mean, at the end of the day, look, have your product in good shape, understand your market, and be ready to deliver, right? Like you can't overpromise, underdeliver. And for the big guys, know how much they can, it's a spigot that can go pretty fast if you're a new player. And don't pretend that you're ready for it when you're not, because it can be a little bit like an oh shit moment when that thing just
I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen more than once.
Oh, yeah.
On both sides of the marketplace. Can you talk a little bit about if you showed up to one of these big channels without, you described having the product, the marketing funnel kind of ironed out. What would you expect the practical consequences of launching in a channel before? Yeah, like if you didn't do all that pre-work, like what might happen?
I mean, A, you could end up just overwhelmed where you've got demand that you can't supply. B, you could end up with just really bad approval rates. You got the wrong target customer that wasn't ready for your credit model. You could have really bad conversion rates. Also, by the way, understand that where these customers are coming from can be credit signals that are different. And this may not be the actual performance of the credit model, which if I was to give a new lender any advice, it's like, number one, make sure your credit performs the way you expect it to perform, and expand beyond the core of what you think of as a consumer you know how to underwrite well, slowly and cautiously. And new channels do represent, even if all the credit variables that you think you're underwriting on are identical, often slightly different credit performance. And you need to be don't just go say, oh, we're going to triple down because we got to deal with Karma and they'll do 3x the volume we did before. That may not perform the way you expect. And that's not a slight to Karma. It could be better, it could be worse, but it's going to be different. And there's nothing you can do that damages your credibility worse than having poor credit performance. So it just, I would be sitting there going, my funnel may not perform the way I think, my credit spec may not perform the way I think, my credit model may not perform the way I think. How do I, all of those things could happen. And so I would be just going, how do I watch, make sure, be very, watch carefully and try and grow slowly. Like the siren song in all lending is trying to grow too rapidly and missing something in that desire. And it's hard because any venture-backed business is, the coin of the realm is growth. And so you want to grow. And, Dave used to tell me, the CEO at Upstart used to go, it's easy to grow a lending business, Jeff. It's easy to lend more money. It's just hard to get it back. Anybody can lend out more money next month than they did this month. It's easy. The problem is, like, can you actually get the money back? And so it's just a business that you have to be willing to take the challenges that come with fundraising or valuations associated with saying, hey, we're going to be a little more measured in our growth because we just can't afford to get these things wrong. And I that's probably the biggest mistake I see people make, is just trying to grow when they're not ready, and they let credit get out of, credit performance get out of whack. And when credit performance gets out of whack, your affiliate partners walk away. You have to pull back lending rates. Your economics go through the floor because all of a sudden your CAC goes up because you're declining more people. Your dollars go away. Your cost of funds go up. Like, everything falls apart when you don't have these things ready. And so you just have to grow in a way that you can manage and control. And I think that's the number one piece of advice I would give, because it may feel like it's just more of the same, but it may not be. And you need to be prepared for how it could be different.
That advice is spot on. I.e. the channel, the source of the account is a predictor of the performance, or it's an important input. And how you execute the channel is another important factor, right? Being at the top of the page on Carmen, being at the bottom of the page, very different results, different numbers of accounts, different loss rates. All that's it's all very connected. It's one of these places where there's always just a feedback loop. The feedback loop's either spinning in your direction or it's spinning against you. There's very few neutral places to live in an affiliate marketplace. You're either in the flywheel where you're getting better and better every month, or it's the opposite.
And that's, I guess, that just exaggerates the point I was making, which is like, that's true. I agree 100%. You're either in the things are going great and it's growing, or it's going badly. And if you don't know what you're getting into, you're going to start the flywheel on the negative loop. And then it's really hard to break out. I mean, it's very hard to go to one of the large players and go, hey, I know we screwed up the first month and things are bad, but I went and made it about it with my capital partners. And we fixed our credit model. Can you put me on the positive side of that flywheel loop now? And it doesn't work that way. So not only can you damage your business, your credibility, your capital partners, your customer relationships, your actual economics, but you may actually put yourself in jail with these guys, not jail, but in a dangerous place with those partners where it's very hard to go back to where they actually can want to provide you with the volume that they have available. So it's worth taking slow and methodically, even if it's not, always the most comfortable thing to have to do.
Cool. Well, Jeff, we're right at time. Fun conversation. I appreciate you coming onto the show. Maybe we can do this again. I'd love to one day maybe talk about the story of Upstart. I know you were joking about maybe having a hand in the book, and I think you'd be in a great position to.
There's no actual book of Upstart, but the founders and I used to joke. We would just, when crazy things would happen, we would just say, that's got to go in the book. Somebody write it down and make sure it goes in the book. And now I got to decide if we're actually going to write that book. But
maybe we can do like a mini audio book version.
We could do. I'll have to do all the research for the book for the audio version, and then we'll remember what happened.
Awesome. Well, for folks that maybe missed at the beginning, Jeff's the host at What the AI. Check it out. It's my favorite way to stay up on what's going on in the AI world. So, Jeff, thanks again for joining us today, and hope to talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Carlos. Thanks.
I want to take a quick break in the action here. If you want to support the show, the number one thing you can do is go to thefreetoaster.com and sign up for our newsletter. You're going to get a couple pieces per week of news, information, insights, and podcasts like the one you're listening to right now at the intersection of marketing, lending, and technology. That's our niche. We don't plan to go outside of that. It's the only publication I've seen out there on the internet that dials into this zone. So if you want to support us, sign up and share it in your favorite Slack channel. This is a quick plug here for my marketing agency. It's called New Market Growth. We do nothing but help fintech lenders accelerate their growth in affiliate marketing channels. Our services are both strategic and operational. And if you want to learn more about how we can help you, find us at newmarketgrowth.com or email me directly at carlos@newmarketgrowth.com.